Hello everyone. Can you all hear me? Hi there, my name's Nick Savini. I'm the political editor for BBC Wales. Good to see you all. There's not translation at the back. I was told to point that out, so if anyone wants the translation, I encourage you to come to the sort of front, the pews at the front where it is available. I hope you've had a good day so far. I'm going to kind of chair a bit of a discussion. I don't think I need to do that much chairing. I'm sure everyone's going to be really well behaved with the 4 assembly members that we've got here. And I should do some introductions just to start off with. I'll go from my right over to my left. We've got for Labour, we have Ken Skates, who's the Deputy Minister for Skills and Technology. We have Rhan ap Iorwerth for Plaid Cymru, who speaks for the party on matters to do with business and the economy. We've got Aled Roberts representing the Lib Dems on my left, immediately to my left, and David Melding for the Conservatives on my far left, who's also the Deputy Presiding Officer. Now, I think I'm just kind of pretty straightforward, open the floor for loads of questions, which I'm sure you've all got. I've got a couple of questions as well, which I don't always get the chance to ask them about. But look, I won't waste any time. I don't know if we've got an order of, have we got an order of questions, or does anyone want to put their hands up if anyone submitted questions to start off with in terms of going first? Brilliant. Okay. So if you want to introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and off you go.
Hello, fy enw yw Matthew. My name is Matthew, and I come from Anglesey.
Okay, what's your question, Matthew?
Fy cwestiwn i yw, sut ydych chi am sicrhau fod y iaith Gymraeg am aros yn ysgolion?
Okay, did you catch that? How would you, I think I sort of didn't quite catch the start. How would you ensure the Welsh language is going to be...
Staying in schools.
Staying in schools. Ken, off you go.
I don't think you... Do I press a button on this? Sorry.
Yes.
There we are. I don't think anyone on any of these tables would disagree that we need to make sure that the Welsh language is promoted, not just in schools, but also in the community and in the home. I think if we are going to see an improvement in the number of people who speak Welsh, then we have to make it, to some extent, a trendy language. I hear all too often from young people who are fluent in Welsh and are first language speakers of Welsh that they don't feel that it's a language that they speak or should speak when they're with their friends in the community, and we have to address this. I think the work that has been done on systems such as the Hub and the promotion of Welsh in the digital world is going to be increasingly important. And the recent news that .Wales and .Cymru will be amongst the next top-level domain names, I think is very important, because we're now going to be able to market Cymraeg in a way that we haven't been able to before across the globe. And it's only by reaching out to people who are outside Wales that we will also see the promotion of the language. For example, we know there's a huge number of fluent first language Welsh people living in London and in Liverpool and Manchester, and I think it's absolutely essential that we reach out to those people who are not living in Wales but are proud to be Welsh and proud to speak Welsh, and we need to make sure that they use the language wherever they are.
Rhan.
I'll answer in 2 languages. Na I atab mewn 2 iaith gan bod gyn bawb ddim offer cyfieithu. Mae pobl sy'n yma o Sir Fôn, lot o'na chi yn byw mewn ardaloedd sy'n Gymraeg i iaith. A Cymraeg ydy'r iaith i chi ar iard yr ysgol, Cymraeg ydy'r iaith da chi'n siarad efo'ch ffrindiau chi, Cymraeg ydy'r iaith da chi'n cymdeithasu yno fo. Mi fydd lot o'r disgyblion eraill, o rannau eraill o Gymru efo profiadau gwahanol iawn i hynny. Felly mae rhaid i wahanol rannau o Gymru ddysgu am werth yr iaith mewn ffordd wahanol, a dwi'n sylweddoli bod yr iaith yn perthyn i bawb, pryd nad ydych chi'n siarad o fel iaith gyntaf neu ddim. Mae rhaid i ni fuddsoddi mewn addysg Gymraeg mewn ysgolion. Mewn ysgolion fatha Bod Edern sy'n ysgol Gymraeg I hiaith. Mae rhaid I ni sicrhau bod Gymraeg yn cael ei buddsoddi yn ni mewn ym mhob rhan o Gymru. Ond dwi yn cytuno efo Ken. Mae rhaid dod ar iaith I mewn I bob rhan o fywyd. Mae rhaid ni ddefnyddio'n role models ni mewn chwaraeon, mewn cerddoriaeth, mewn ffilmiau ag ati I ddangos bod y Gymraeg yn iaith sy'n cael ei defnyddio ar bob lefel. Ydy, na chwarae o rygbi eitha enwog o'ch ysgol chi, da ni'n gwybod sy'n yn siarad Cymraeg. Mae rhaid defnyddio role models yna. What I was saying is basically that some of the pupils from the frontier, they come from my constituency, from an area where the Welsh language is widely spoken. They will use Welsh from day to day in youth clubs, in the school, on the schoolyards. Got to watch maybe Welsh bands, listen to Welsh music. The experience will be different in different parts of Wales. So I think we need to learn from each other about what the Welsh language is and the fact that it belongs to all of us, whether or not we speak it as a first language or as learners. We need to invest in Welsh medium education wherever you are in Wales so you can be proud of your heritage. But we also need, as Ken says, to show that Welsh is a language to be used. George North used to go to these guys' school, decent rugby player, Welsh speaker, very proud of being a Welsh speaker. Matthew Rhys, international film star, Johan Griffith, Julian Lewis-Jones, some of these, film stars, first language Welsh speakers using it every day. Musicians using it from day to day. It's a language to be used. It's not a relic, and it belongs to all of us, and that's what we need to promote.
Didn't know George North went to your school. It's interesting.
Did you know that I coach his former rugby team, Nick?
Learn something every day. Right, let's move across here. Aled Roberts.
Well, Mark Hughes fynd i'r ysgol I. Dwi'n meddwl bod I was just saying Mark Hughes went to my school, so dwi'n meddwl bod y sefyllfa'n wahanol. Mae'n gwestiwn amserol I ddeud y gwir, achos mae'r Llywodraeth wedi gwneud datganiad bore yma. Mae'n ofynnol rwan ar bob cyngor I wneud cynllun addysg Gymraeg, ac fel oedd Rhun yn deud, mae'r cynlluniau yna yn adlewyrchu gwahanol sefyllfaoedd mae'r cynghori yna yn ffeindio hunain. Ges I nwyn I fyny 2 milltir o'r ffin yn ardal Wrexham yn Rhos. Hynny mae hanner y pentre dal I siarad Cymraeg sydd yn wyrth I ryw raddau. Ond dwi'n meddwl bod y sefyllfa yn wahanol o sir I sir. Mae yna sefyllfaoedd lle mae yna bolisiau gwan iawn wedi cael eu cymeradwyo o fewn ardaloedd lle mae'r iaith Gymraeg dal yn gry. Dwi'n meddwl bod lawer o waith I wneud gan Sir Gyrfyrddin, enghraifft. Tra yn yn ardal I yn Wrexham, mae'r cyngor sir wedi bod yn cael problemau ynglyn â copio efo'r galw cynyddol am addysg Gymraeg. A'r broblem sgynnon ni yna ydy bod y cyngor ddim yn cynllunio. Ond dwi hefyd yn cytuno fo beth wedodd Ken I ryw raddau. Os dyn ni'n meddwl mai ysgolion yn unig sy'n mynd I ddiogelu'r iaith Gymraeg, dwi'n meddwl bod ni yn wirion. Mae'n ofynnol ar pob un ohono ni sy'n siarad Cymraeg I ddefnyddio'r Gymraeg gartre ag ar y strydoedd. Dio ddim gwerth o gwbl os dyn ni'n creu sefyllfaoedd lle mae'r iaith Gymraeg yn cael ei gyflwyno I blant o gefndiroedd di-Gymraeg, lle dyn ni fel Cymru Cymraeg yn anwybyddu yn cyfrifoldebau ni tuag at yr iaith. Felly, mae yna gyfrifoldeb arnoch chi fel unigolion hefyd I wneud yn siŵr bod chi'n defnyddio y Gymraeg gymaint a fedrwch chi.
David.
Can I just start, Nick, by saying, not being very technical, I've not worked out how to operate the translation equipment, and my Welsh is very shaky, so I've not caught everything. I think the big shift that occurred, really, in educational policy was the 1980s, when lots of English-speaking parents started to request bilingual education for their children. Before that, a few English-speaking parents would do that. The odd hippie would move into West Wales and part of their life statement, the kids would go to Welsh school and all that. But the big shift occurred in the 80s when people started to pick up bilingual education, particularly primary schools, which now means over 30% of people get primary school education. And that's the social shift we need to build upon, because there's an awful lot of you in here who've always had Welsh. It's your, one of your natural languages. There are others like me who've had to learn, acquire what Welsh we have. And it's that group, I think, that we've really got to support. And education is the best way to achieve a more bilingual society. And I'm fairly radical. We set targets for the environment for 2040, 2050. We'll probably set them for the end of the century before long. And I think that's what we need to do for the number of Welsh speakers we want in society. I certainly think if we don't aim ambitiously, then at some point, these social trends may reverse. So I think we have to be very ambitious. And a lot of you have a part to play in this, because many of you will end up being teachers, and those of you that are either natural Welsh speakers or have acquired a lot of Welsh, I hope you'll go into bilingual schools and make yourself available for these staff opportunities in the South Wales valleys, in perhaps places you wouldn't have thought of. There's a wonderful comprehensive in my region, in Treorchy, which is as English an area as you can get, really, which is now bilingual. And hardly any of the pupils there have had Welsh from their parents, but they now have a bilingual secondary education. And it's that scope and vision we need. And I think our vision should be that all schools, to some extent, are bilingual by a certain time. It may sound preposterous, but what else should we try to aim for if we really want to save one of Europe's great glories? Is probably the oldest fully literate tradition post the Roman times. It is remarkable what we have, but it will take a lot of effort to build on the somewhat accidental policy shift that occurred in the 80s, because I'm sure when people established the right to bilingual education in the 80s, they didn't actually think English-speaking parents would exercise that right. They thought they were just giving it to Welsh speakers. But we need to build on that type of opportunity and have the vision for really profound change, which is going to have to come through education.
Yeah, some really interesting thoughts there. I'd be interested in terms of, put your hands up, how many of you would consider yourself fluent in Welsh? Who's here? So it's about 50%, I think, roughly, thereabout. David, what was it, the ambition that all schools in Wales should be bilingual, you think, as a sort of realistic target that we should go on?
Well, I'll be advised, but the point is, when we look at the environment, we are quite keen to set targets 25 years hence, 50 years hence. And if we don't, everyone says Wales, and it is official policy, that Wales should become a bilingual nation. But, it's not bilingual if you just protect the rights of the 20-25% of the people that can speak Welsh. That's tolerating and encouraging the Welsh community to flourish, but bilingual means that everyone has some sort of working ability in Welsh. Now, lots of adults will never get to that, obviously, but those passing through the education system do get that opportunity, and that's key, I think.
Okay.
And it's key that people will be part of this and take up teaching posts.
Rhin, I think you just wanted to dive in.
Yeah, well, not on the point that I wanted to raise. Can I ask, hands up who don't speak Welsh fluently, right? Keep your hands up now if you kind of like to be able to speak Welsh and take part in sort of Welsh culture, listen to Welsh music and that kind of thing. So it's a good half of those. Well, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to have that opportunity in your years at school to be able to be relatively fluent in Wales. And we're failing you if we're not able to give you that opportunity. The point I wanted to raise was, pwynt gafodd ei wneud gan Disgyblion o Ynys Môn. Nes i wneud dipyn o waith ymchwil cyn heddiw yn dweud, pobl ifanc Môn isio i bobl gael mwy o falchder yn eu Cymreictod, right? Mwy o gyfleoedd i fandiau Cymraeg, dathlu llenorion pwysig Cymraeg ag yn y blaen. Faint o'na chi sy'n gwybod bod un o'n beirdd enwoca gorau ni yng Nghymru wedi marw ddoe? Right? How many of you know that one of Wales's finest poets died yesterday? Right, relatively small number. Ken?
Yeah, I'm thinking actually back to the 1980s, what David was saying. It's very interesting. Neither of my parents could speak Welsh back in the early 1980s, but when we started at primary school, there was a very interesting development. The Welsh teachers at primary schools where I lived stayed behind of an evening once a week and free of charge, totally voluntarily, gave Welsh language classes to the parents of pupils at the school. And they were encouraged to bring along a bottle of wine and have very much a social evening. So on a Monday evening, my parents had come home slurring in Welsh. But it was a really good way of making sure that during the course of an evening, each day of each week, we could converse in Welsh with our parents who had never spoken Welsh before. And that way, it introduced it into the home, and it encouraged then us to speak the language as well in our community. And it was a community, it's fair to say, in North East Wales where very few people prior to that actually spoke Welsh.
Okay, look, I want to move on. Aled's come to a very quick point then, Aled, on this.
I just want to make the point that I actually received all my education through English, and if my grandmother hadn't actually been living in our home, I think that by now my Welsh would probably be non-existent, because I'd actually, as a teenager, started responding to my mother and father in English when they spoke to me in Welsh. Most of my friends I spoke English to, and I actually had to take a conscious decision when I was about 19 or 20 to question why I'd started speaking English with a load of my friends. And that, I think there's a little switch in your brain that actually tells you which language you speak with certain people. And one of the hardest things in the world is to actually switch that language back if you actually allowed your Welsh language skills to disappear.
The switch in the brain, there you go. Do you want to say anything? Happy with what you've... Okay. Right, who's got another question? Right, so right, I'll come to you. Just let's go give another school a chance, and then we'll come back. Did I see a hand sort of coming up over there? That way? Oh, yeah, right. Okay, third row.
Hi. I'm Kerry, I'm from Pontarddulais. The options for GCSE vary in every single different school in the country. Don't you think it should be consistent and that everyone should have the same opportunities? Why is it fair that I have fewer or less opportunities and choices than people in the next school?
Good question. Okay, the Kens.
Okay, the key thing is that your education makes you employable, that it equips you with the necessary skills to get work, and on that basis, you need to be able to find a job, hopefully within your locality, upon leaving school, college or university. Yesterday we launched the Skills Implementation Plan, which at its heart has a regional delivery principle. We need to make sure that we bolster the strengths of each of our regions. For example, where I'm from in North East Wales, we're heavily reliant on advanced manufacturing. In Llyn's constituency, there is a growing reliance on the energy sector. And in David's constituency, what's your heavy reliance, David? What would your your economy would be based around finance, presumably, and other skilled sectors that you can identify growth in employment. So there is an important value in actually having an education system that is tailored and aligned with what the local economy requires. I don't think that you can have a single standardized approach to education if the purpose of education is to actually get you a job at the end of the day.
I'll stick with the same order. Reen, go on.
Yeah, you have to have a standard core, and that's the key thing. And there is, of course, a standard core in mathematics, science, Welsh, English, numeracy, literacy. These are the core things. The challenges that mean there are different subjects in different schools are around more than likely sizes of schools and so on. And we tend to, in our constituency, have relatively small secondary schools. So what we have on Anglesey now is more cooperation between schools and between the school and further education colleges, where you have pupils leaving schools. I don't know if it happens with Byddedan, it certainly happens with Llangefni, where even at GCSE level, you have pupils leaving school to get their education in certain subjects in the local FE college, and switching between schools as well. Ken's absolutely right. Conditions will vary from area to area, but the key thing is to get the core right, especially at GCSE level. You haven't reached that point in your life where you need to specialise. Get the core right, everything else will come from there.
And presumably, there's do you feel there's a kind of breadth of GCSE's offerings in some of the other schools then, or maybe your school has given you a breadth that isn't available in some of the others?
Yeah, for some schools offer like triple science, and that's a core subject, and then you have schools maybe that won't offer that, and it just feels like there's more opportunities in maybe different schools.
I'll absolutely come back on that. I would put triple science as core. I can't understand how schools cannot offer triple science up to GCSE level.
And Aled, you know, you used to run a local authority in Wrexham. You know, but local education authorities. You know, it is, I suppose, a noble ambition to have this kind of thing. But in reality, schools are of different sizes. They've got different resources, and really, you know, we've got the core subject. It's difficult to go any further than that, presumably.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of too much central control. I think what you offer on the ground should reflect the needs of your area, as Ken stated. But obviously, the offer that a school can make is very much dependent on the size of the school, but it's also dependent on the skill sets of the teachers concerned. And perhaps what we ought to be doing is concentrating on the core offer, and then ensuring that we actually sort of you know, I think one of the dangers that we've done is that because we've got so much emphasis on the 5 A stars to C, some of the decisions with regard to what's offered is determined by ensuring that a school can appear high in a banding system, rather than ensuring that actually sort of as wide an offer as possible is offered to youngsters. I've just got a 14-year-old who's decided on his options this year. He's lucky he's in a school that's got triple science, so he's taken triple science. But that means, for example, that he studies French outside school. There's not space on the school curriculum. And some of the space within the school curriculum is taken by decisions that the government makes here that, for example, will suggest that in future years there needs to be more concentration on maths, because we've realised that perhaps some of the skills that we need in maths and English and literacy and numeracy we're suffering from, and industry is telling us that we're suffering as a nation. But I think it should be very much dependent on local need as much as possible.
David, is this a problem?
Well, I take a very traditional view. I think it's a range of core skills you need. You know, you need some mathematical skills, you need literary skills, other humanities and science. And how you acquire them, there can be some variation. You don't need to be so prescriptive about the particular science, perhaps. But I think if you specialize very early, or don't quite realize how important it is, you know, even if you're really, really devoted to the sciences, to still have historical understanding is very crucial. In fact, you know, the history of science, no less, you're just never going to understand it unless you have some of those core skills. So they sort of relate to each other. Similarly, if you ever end up as a historian, if you've not done some, you know, basic maths, you're going to have great difficulty understanding lots of data that you're going to have to read. So I wouldn't get so concerned about the absolute width of the choice that's before you. But I think you should do a variety of subjects, and you're probably then going to find, you know, your path in life developing as you need to specialize more and more. My favorite I did O-levels, it shows how old I am. My favourite O-level was woodwork. And I'm so old, it was called woodwork then. It'll be called sort of design and technology, goodness knows what today. And it was just a nice thing to do. It was actually very rigorous, but I mean, it was craft-based, obviously. It was a different way of working. And I found that a very good balance to all the more highly academic subjects I did. So, you know, I think some choice and going a bit left of field is good. But core subject and skills understanding and acquiring those core skills is very, very important, I think, up to the age of 18.
Right, well, I'd never have known David Melding's favourite subject at school was woodwork. There you go. Right, I'm going to take another question quickly, because Ken has got to leave us. He's got an event to go to. Right, I can see all hands go. Right, let's go for one there, another side of the room.
Dwi'n Ben Jones, dwi, dod o Ynys Môn, Bydedyn. Cymerodd o 4.5 awr I ni cyrraedd yma. Sut ydych chi yn cynllunio I wella'r trafnidiaeth rhwng Gogledd Cymru a De Cymru?
Okay, good question for Ken, representing a constituency in North Wales, an area in North Wales. Ken.
It's a good question. I know what it's like to travel from the north to the south, how long it can take and the delays that can be incurred. But it's not just about travelling north to south that we need to focus our minds on. East to west is, in terms of economic links, probably more important for both the north and the south. So it's improvements to both connectivity north-south, but also those key economic corridors of the A55 in the north and the M4 in the south that need to be given attention, and they are being given attention, both in terms of the road infrastructure and the rail infrastructure as well. In terms of you coming here today, I'm keen to, and as someone that supported the establishment of the National Assembly for Wales in Machynlleth, I'm keen to see the National Assembly reach out more to the north and to Mid Wales and to West Wales as well. So actually, I'd like to see more events like this taking place at the National Assembly's offices in Colwyn Bay.
I was at an event in Llandudno the other day, and the speaker said, thank you for all coming up from South Wales. It's funny, but the journey from south to north is always that much longer than from north to south. So a little dig there at how maybe none of us working in South Wales get up to North Wales as much as we probably should. Aled?
Digon gwir. Os ydych chi fel aelod o'r gogledd, mae y cyfarfodydd yma wastad yn dechrau am 9 o'r gloch y bore. O'n i gofod dod lawr 5 o'r gloch y bore dydd Llun mwyn cyrraedd yma. Os dyn nhw'n trefnu cyfarfodydd yn y gogledd, dyn nhw byth yn dechrau cyn hanner dydd, o achos bod pobl o'r de gofod teithio fyny, ond joc di hynny. Dwi'n meddwl, mae'n anodd deall pa faint gwell ydy'r sefyllfa heddiw na be oedd o pan o'n i'n yn eich oed chi, achos o'n i'n 20 oed cyn i mi ddod lawr i Gaerdydd am y tro cyntaf. Felly mae pethau wedi gwella, ond yn amlwg, yn hanesyddol, dwi'n meddwl bod y cysylltiadau wastad i bod rhwng y gorllewin a'r dwyrain, yn y gogledd ag yn y de, o achos bod yna rhyw fath o feddylfryd bod cadw ni fel un gwlad a cenedl ddim yn bwysig. Ond dwi'n meddwl bod hi'n beth hawdd. Mae'r fuddsoddiad fysa'n rhaid i ni wneud o ran ffyrdd a'r rheilffyrdd. A dyn ni'n sôn am wario rhyw 20 miliwn rhwng Caer a Wrecsam ar hyn o bryd. Fydd hynny ond yn gwella yr amser teithio o ryw 3 munud o Gaergybi. Felly, mae yna lot o arian angen i wario mwyn creu sefyllfa lle dyn ni. Mae'n haws i mi fynd o Wrecsam i Lundain na o Wrecsam i Gaerdydd.
And Rina, you know, the fundamental problem here is we've got this beautiful sort of virgin countryside between North and South Wales, and you just can't build a dual carriageway or a motorway from north to south.
You can, but it's not practically possible in financial terms. That's the truth of the matter. I do the journey from North to South Wales every week. Dwi'n gwybod yn iawn pa mor anodd ydy'r siwrna. Dwi'n gwybod bod rhaid i ni ddod ar amser siwrna na lawr. A mae angen gwario arian. Pan mae pobl lawr o'r gogledd i Gaerdydd neu o'r gorllewin i Gaerdydd, dwi eisiau chi deimlo bod y ddinas ma'n eiddo i chi. Eich prif ddinas chi ydi hon. A mae'n bwysig iawn i ni yng Nghymru i adeiladu'r cysylltiadau fel eich bod chi'n teimlo yn agos at Gaerdydd. Ond mae angen dreif gwleidyddol mwyn i hynny ddigwydd. Mae rhaid cael pobl sy'n fodlon rhoi llaw yn eu poced a gwneud yn siŵr bod yr arian yna ar gyfer buddsoddi. O'n i'n mynd i Llundain dydd Llun, 2 awr a chwarter. Tys ni eisiau dod o Ynys Môn i Gaerdydd, ond 4 awr a chwarter. Dydy o ddim yn gwneud sens. A mae ffordd i sicr ddod ar siwrna tren yn fyrach. Mae nawelliannau wedi digwydd o ran ffyrdd, sy'n golygu bod y siwrna spel yn fyrach rwan ag oedd o. Mae rhaid mynd y cama pellach yna a dod o fel awr eto. Ond mae'n rhaid i fan hyn a Llywodraeth Cymru roed arweiniad a yn job i'n sicr yn cynrychioli Ynys Môn ydi gwneud yn siŵr bod ni'n gwthio am hynna.
And David, I suppose one of the kind of challenges is that to invest in better north-south links, and it will cost money, with a finite resource, isn't it? And the pressure will be on the east-west connections because economically, both in South and North Wales, that is what a lot of jobs are reliant on.
Well, I mean, geography is our geography, and the east-west flows, both in North Wales and in South Wales, are the most, are the arterial routes, and they do get, a good level of investment as a result. I don't think we should be complacent about north-south links. I think it is important for our sense of national togetherness, and we're not helped by Cardiff being nearly as far south as you can get in Wales. I think Barry is actually, or Roos is the most southerly point. But it does mean that North Wales can look quite isolated. And we have to do a lot to sort of overcome that. I have to say, I think Reen's predecessor, Ieuan Wyn-Jones, introduced a very far-sighted policy in improving the A470, and I think the government and his department looked at all sorts of ways of doing that, and went, looked at other countries that have similar problems, like Switzerland, where you have certain parts of the road that are widened, so you have passing points. I think they should also look at the law on these on the main roads as well, saying that if you're a slow vehicle, there are certain sections on the road where you should be pulling over to a crawler lane, and there are ways of improving journey time. So that's the way I would like to go. Where I don't think I'd want a great big dual carriageway all the way from here to Caernarfon. I mean, the wonder of our countryside to some extent would be diminished by that. So, but we could do more, and on the trains as well, there's some key routes that should be invested in, and I think Ieuan started this as well, and there's a very fine route that goes all the way to Bangor that you can even have dinner on, which as a Tory is quite attractive at certain times of the year.
Presumably then, I mean, you're pretty, you don't look forward to that journey then. What are your thoughts on that journey and the amount of times you've had to do it?
Fysa'r lonydd jyst un syth yn gwell, oherwydd mae'n cymryd yr un amser I fynd reit rownd rhwng Lloegr I Caerdydd, na jyst fynd syth I lawr, a dyna ni jyst angen gwell efo. Ond mae'r tren yn gwell na'r lonydd rwan, oherwydd mae'n mwy sydyn na'r lonydd hefyd.
Cofio hefyd bod Llywodraeth Cymru a'r Cynulliad ond I bod yma am ryw 15 mlynedd, ac os ti'n edrych ar yr rheilffordd yn bendant yn y gogledd a trwy'r gorore, trwy'r ymwythig a henffordd, mae'r hanau o hynny rhyw gan mlwydd oed. Dos na'n buddsoddiad di bod am ryw ganrif, felly mae yna lot o waith I ddal I fyny efo fo.
Are there any schools, right, who have not asked a question? So I didn't want to make sure everyone... Right, we got someone in the far corner then, over there.
Fenw yw Garin o Ysgol Plas Mawr yma yng Nghaerdydd. Ni gyd yma heddi I ceisio cael mwy o bobl ifanc I diddori yn gwleidyddiaeth. Ond mae digwyddiadau fel hyn yn helpu. Ond fi'n meddwl, y prif problem yw pryd dwi a fi'n siŵr pawb arall yn troi ar teledu. Ni'n gweld gwleidyddion sydd ddim yn edrych fel ni. Ni'n gweld gwleidyddion sydd, mae yna lleihad yn pobl sydd o ethnigrwydd lleiafrifol, pobl ifanc, menywod. So beth yw'r cynlluniau gan pob un plaid I ceisio hybu hynny, I wneud I pobl ifanc fel ni, I teimlo fel petai ni'n cael eu cynrychioli'n deg?
Well, a really pertinent question this. I don't know if you've been following the recent cabinet reshuffle, and I think a lot of commentators are talking about it's an attempt to reduce the number of white middle-aged men in Conservative ranks to make them more electable, or as they were called.
That's UK government as well.
Yes, UK government at Westminster level, sorry, yeah. Pale, male and stale was the three things that I laughed about that. Reen.
Unrhyw rai yna chi'n ymwneud â Funky Dragon o gwbl? Mae yna dipyn o ffrau wedi bod yn yr wythnosau diwetha oherwydd bod arian wedi cael ei dynnu oddi wrth Funky Dragon, sef yr corff o bobl ifanc oedd yn trafod gwaith y Llywodraeth. A mae pobl wedi gofyn I fi, plis cefnogi ymgyrch I gadw Funky Dragon. Dwi ddim yn cytuno efo'r ymgyrch honno, ond be dwi eisiau di mynd llawer pellach na be oedd Funky Dragon yn ei wneud. Dwi'n meddwl y dyla fod yna senedd I bobl ifanc yn fan hyn, a dwi'n meddwl bod hi'n amser symud ymlaen at sefyllfa lle mae gennym ni rhywbeth sy'n rhan o'r lle yma, sydd ddim yn rhywbeth mae'r Llywodraeth yn gallu tynnu'r cash oddi arno fo, sydd jyst yn bodoli, a lle mae yna ffordd i'r corff hwnnw roi I barn nhw ynglyn â gwaith y Senedd a hefyd gwaith y Llywodraeth. Na ddeud un stori bach wrthych chi, o'n i'n Canada'n ddiweddar efo aelod seneddol o Rwanda. Mae yna Senedd ieuenctid yn Rwanda, lle mae 2 aelod ohono fo'n eistedd fel MPs go iawn. Felly mae yna gynrychiolwyr o Senedd ieuenctid yn eistedd yn Senedd ac yn pleidleisio fel aelodau seneddol llawn. be nath Francis, enw'r gŵr yma, ar ôl cyfnod fel aelod ieuenctid, oedd sefyll mewn etholiad fel aelod seneddol go iawn, os lici di. Wan, dwi'n yn gwybod os allwn ni fynd cweit mor bell â hynny, mi fyswn ni'n licio hynny, ond dyna'r math o bwysigrwydd da ni angen i roi, a roi llais i bobl ifanc mewn gwleidyddiaeth. A dwi'n meddwl bod yna gyfle da o golli Funky Dragon i beidio meddwl amdano fo fel rhywbeth sy'n mynd, ond rhywbeth sy'n cael ei wella a'i gryfhau. Os mi yw wirioneddol yn bwysig i fi. Os dwi'n eitha ifanc hefyd, ond ydych chi'n meddwl hynny.
I'm going to ask a difficult question. I want an honest answer. Put your hands up. I mean, it's a bit of a vague question, I suppose. How many of you are interested in politics? Well, that's most of you. That's pretty much it. Well, yeah, most of you there. David, I mean, he's deputy presiding officer. There's an element of a role with your job in terms of promotion of Welsh politics and the Assembly itself as an institution.
Well, I'm pale, I'm male. Am I stale? I'm not sure.
Not at all.
It's, I think the new institutions, the Scottish Assembly, Parliament, and particularly us in the Assembly, have done a lot better than Westminster. Perhaps because at least two of the political parties represented here made very brave decisions early on to get more women elected. So we've done well on gender balance. We've also had quite a lot of young members elected. I don't think we've ever been without someone in their 20s serving in the Assembly. So I think that's, that's good as well. We're doing a bit better with ethnic communities now, but I think that is probably the most fragile part of our democratic system, and we do need to see more people coming through. So, it's work in progress, but it's a very important issue you put your finger on, because I think we've seen politics develop very much from, say, the Second World War, when there was still a fairly elitist view that you could leave it to middle-aged men, and they may have come through the labour ranks and trade unions, or the traditional sort of Tories of the Shires and that. And that world does seem so very, very distant now. So once the cabinet reshuffle, you can perhaps say, well, it's about time. I think it does reflect the impatience of people to just to see their politicians looking less and less in touch potentially, because they do not seem to share their life experiences. So and political parties are realising this, and are at one level fearful that they will lose support unless they reform. That's one half. The second half, which Reen touched upon, is that representational politics is weakening. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but up until the 1960s or 1970s, people would pretty much let politicians get on with it, unless something was catastrophically wrong. Now, I don't think people feel that. They want to be engaged. They want their politicians to do some of the heavy lifting, but they want to be part of decision-making. And of course, new technology in all sorts of ways permits this. And I think that in the Assembly, we've tried to build on that. We have a youth engagement strategy, which is currently being launched, and you're all part of. And it's whether you're on the key appointments. Why shouldn't... has anyone here been on an appointment panel for a senior member of staff at your schools? Anyone on a head teacher, assistant head teacher? One or two? I mean, that ought to be standard, in my view, that someone from the school council is on the appointments panel. I think lowering the voting age to 16 at least would then mean an awful lot of people who are currently consuming the education service are then able to vote on it. I think that would be very, very positive too, and certainly something we should try to do in the Assembly, even if Westminster never gets around to it. And it's active engagement constantly, because a lot of you, you may be intensely interested in politics, but you might want to wait until middle age before you put yourself forward as candidates. You're going to go into your chosen careers, you may develop your profession, you'll have families, and you may not want to enter politics until you're slightly older. And that's, I think, a natural process, as well as being open to those that want to do it younger. So there are many, many approaches to this very important question, and I do think we're making progress, but a lot more to do.
Yeah, a massive issue this. On Radio Wales this morning, I had a great description of a reshuffle, loads of reshuffles going on, and it was, someone said, well, it's someone no one has ever heard of being replaced by someone no one has ever heard of. So there's massive efforts to try to kind of get people engaged with it. And before we bring Aled in, the question of what are your sort of thoughts on it? Do you think it's a real problem? Do you think, you know, the politicians that you elect are just not kind of representing society? Or
Yeah, I think, you know, people get tired now of continuously. I don't think people feel they're truly reflected by what they elect anymore. I mean, all you've got to do is look into Westminster and see it's so old-fashioned. It needs to be revamped. It needs to lose the old traditions and the heckling. It distances politics from young people and from people in general, I think. So, yeah, I think it's a massive issue.
And it's a question for all, you know, journalists as well, not just the politicians, I think. Aled?
Wel, mae'r pleid gwleidyddol wedi ymateb mewn gwahanol ffyrdd. Mae'r Blaid Lafur yr esiampl wedi cadw quotas, lle maen nhw'n deud at ardaloedd penodol, mae'r rhaid i chi ddewis merch. Dwi ddim yn cefnogi hynny, ddeud y gwir. Dwi'n meddwl mae peth gorau ni'n neud ydy dewis y person gorau am y swydd o fewn yr ardal yna. Mae hynny'n creu heriau i ni. Mae'n ddiddorol os ydych chi'n edrych ar y Daily Mail bore yma. Mae yna double page spread yn y Daily Mail. A'r holl merched sydd wedi cael ei dewis yn y cabinet, be maen nhw wedi gwneud ydy tynnu lluniau o'i coesau nhw wrth nhw gerdded lawr Downing Street. Nawr, mae hynny'n deud rhywbeth am y gymdeithas neu o leia y cyfryngau yn y wlad yma ynglyn â y ffordd maen nhw'n gweld merched yn y rôl yna. Gwleidyddion pwysig sydd wedi cael eu penodi i'r cabinet ac eto'r unig beth sydd gwerthu i weld ydy eu coesau nhw. Yn yr un ffordd, mae'n debyg, mae rhaid ni herio pam mae yna bwyllgorau o bleidiau gwleidyddol sydd dal yn gweld mae pobl gwyn, canol oed, dynion gwyn canol oed, ydy'r pobl orau, a bod nhw ddim yn barod i ystyried merched a bobl o gefndiroedd lleafrifol ethnig o ran cynrychiolaeth. Ond dwi'n meddwl hefyd bod yna rhaid i ni fel sefydliad yma yn y bai. Dwi'n meddwl bod y sefyllfa yma'n weithred a beidion San Steffan, ond mae dal yn anodd iawn unai i dad plant ifanc neu yn waith fydd mam plant ifanc i dderbyn cyfrifoldeb o ran swydd. Mae dwy o'r merched sydd yn aelodi o'm rhaid i efo plant ifanc. A dwi'n gwybod y pris maen nhw gofod talu fel mamau o achos y ffordd dyn ni yn trefnu y gwaith yma yn y cynulliad. Ac i ryw raddau, dwi'n meddwl hyd yn oed os fyse'r holl bethau eraill yn cael ei sortio, mae yna dal gwestiwn yn codi. Dwi'n gwybod bod yn rhaid i wedi rhoi gorau swydd efo bod yn rheolwr yn yr heddlu o achos bod hi'n teimlo bod i theulu hi mwy pwysig na gofod teithio i Gaer Gybi pan oedd y prif gwnstabl yn galw iddi fynd allan efo ryw lofruddiaeth nhw beth. A cwestiynau felly dwi'n gwybod, cos dwi'n gwybod wrth siarad efo Kirsty a Eluned sydd yn ngrŵp i, maen nhw'n teimlo rhyw fath o euogrwydd o ran y ffaith bod weithiau bod nhw ddim yn gadael y lle yma tan 10 y gloch 11 y nos. Ac dyna i ryw raddau y rhwystyr yn erbyn cael mwy o ferched. O ran hanes y cynulliad wrth gwrs, mae cynrychiolaeth o ran merched wedi bod llawer iawn gwell yn y lle yma na bron unrhyw senedd arall yn Ewrop.
Yeah, well, good point to end it on there. Right, we've had quite a few questions sort of here in the front. What about over there and at the back? Anyone sort of... right, hand over there.
Hello, I'm Tyler from Pontedilais. In light of the Minister for Natural Resources being sacked, what are other politicians doing to re-establish the trust in the electorate, in particular people like me who are young and in a couple of years will be given the opportunity to vote?
Okay, this is in relation to Alan Davies, cabinet member of the Welsh Government who was sacked last week. Those who weren't aware of it, pretty unusual state of affairs, big story here in terms of how people like myself and how we covered politics at the Assembly. David.
Well, at one level, Carwyn Jones is right, the system works because governments are very powerful things. And in our established democracy, in what is now a very stable part of the world, though Europe has not always been that way, or Western Europe even, And, we perhaps take it for granted that governments will pretty much at least want to do the right thing, even if they don't execute it terribly effectively sometimes. So I don't think many of us really feel the government is out to get us. But they do have a huge amount of power. There's no two ways about it. Executive authority in the United Kingdom is very intense. That's why we need a powerful assembly, or if you're looking at Westminster Parliament, to hold the executive to account. Those ministers, when they make decisions, have to come and defend their position. Now, when Carwyn Jones decided originally not to fire Alan Davies, he had to come and justify that in the Assembly, and it's not an easy thing to do. I can assure you that the Senedd is and does feel like at the big moments as the nation's forum, and it has great authority, and people that try to equivocate or advancing arguments that are not very robust, they don't relish it, they don't last very long in terms of that particular attitude. It's a great test. And I think during the course of the week, that did happen. Things were exposed, and I don't want to dwell too much on the actual events, but in the end, it was the civil service that referred the second misdemeanor to the First Minister, and I'm sure that those civil servants, in part, watched the Assembly's proceedings and thought, that type of rigour could be applied to this question again, and if we don't act properly and refer matters, then there could be consequences. So I think the Assembly as a chamber of scrutiny did work, and what the Minister did was worthy, I think, of removal from office, and that is what happened. In many countries, you wouldn't even know about these misdemeanors, let alone remove the minister concerned.
And by way of background, we haven't got a member of the executive here because Ken Skates, who is a member of the Welsh Government, had to go earlier because of an event. But by way of background, Alan Davies is a minister, and as a minister, he does have a kind of wider responsibility other than just to his constituency, the local people who elect him, and the party that he represents. And a week before he was sacked, he was judged to have broken the rules on that, but the First Minister gave him another chance, stuck by his man, and then subsequently more revelations came to light, and then he had to sack him, or he did sack him. Reen?
Yeah, I'll put it in simpler terms what he did. He tried to use his power, the fact that he was a minister, to dish the dirt on political opponents. He used the fact that he had a civil servant to find some stuff to cause scandals about political opponents. You mentioned there not liking the heckling and the people shouting at each other. That's what the minister tried to do. He tried to use the power of government to smear opponents. I don't think people want that. He lost his job because he's not allowed to do that. And it kind of brought this place into disrepute because of exactly that kind of opinion that we heard about there. I fought an election last year. It was a by-election. These people from Bethesda here would have been fed up of seeing my name up on posters all around Anglesey all last summer, but we decided to fight a really, really positive campaign. We didn't smear our opponents. I was a journalist until last year working with Nick here, and I didn't like that kind of smearing, underhand politics then, and I don't like it now. I think what people want to hear is people discussing their ideas, talking about what they would like to do to make things better, rather than trying to undermine somebody else because of some personal scandal. Somebody else might call that naive. That's what happens in politics. But I say, no, actually, let's try to have a new kind of politics where we do say, let's discuss the ideas, engage with you on those things. What can we do to make your lives better, working with you? How can we make education better? How can we make sure that you get more subjects at GCSE? Not going around sort of smearing each other. That particular minister paid the price. Hope it's a lesson for other people not to do something that stupid again, and hope that we can, move on from there and show that we want to talk with you, engage with you. It's us, it's not us and you. It's all of us in this together, as somebody once said.
I'll bring Aled in, and if you can be brief, because then we may have time to squeeze in another question.
Okay. Politics is about power, but in power you can have abuse of power, and that was the situation that we found ourselves in last week. As individual assembly members, we're all subject to a standards code. We have a standards commissioner who can accept reports against us as individual assembly members. There's also a ministerial code. But the standards code and the ministerial code is dependent on strong scrutiny, as Rhan and David have said. It's also dependent on a strong media who can actually expose. And the reality is, last week, we were very heavily reliant on a civil servant who was ready to actually stand and say, actually, power in this situation is being abused, and reported the matter to their superior, and as a result, the First Minister took action. But in any situation, particularly in a situation where one party has actually had power for a considerable length of time, there are always individuals who will be tempted to actually abuse that power on occasions.
Okay, I've got time for a final question? Yeah, good. Right, let's go in the middle at the back. I'm conscious of a big sort of area of the room. No one's had a question from that area. Middle and back. Someone put their hand up. Right, yeah, okay.
Hi, my name's Jordan. I'm from Newport. Talking about GCSEs, where you have a kind of base level core subjects, moving into A-levels where you start to specialise, do you think it's unfair that Welsh Bac's being forced on people where they still only get a basic understanding?
The what, sorry? The Welsh Bac?
Welsh Bac, the laureate.
The Welsh Bac has been forced on people. Rhan?
So the Welsh Bac, are you doing the Welsh Bac now? Do you want to do it? You'd rather not? The way I look at it is like this. I've been going into my old school, David Hughes, on Anglesey for a number of years, talking to Welsh Bac students about citizenship and that kind of thing. You're doing that now? All I say is we never had an opportunity to talk about things other than the actual subject we were studying when I was at school. I'm really pleased that there is a wider subject looking at issues of business and entrepreneurship and citizenship. I've always been a supporter of the Welsh Bac in those terms. I think it's going to be much better now in that it's graded, because it's going to be easier for universities to decide if it's a good bac or a bad bac. But I've always been a strong supporter of bac because of the very narrow education that I had, and I think now it's a good thing that things are broader. But I realise, obviously, it's a challenge sometimes to juggle your subjects. And I was talking to somebody the other day who's doing 4 A-levels and the bac, and he was complaining about the bac being hard work. Well, he was clearly a very bright student. He wanted to take a lot on board. I'm a big supporter of it. Could always be improved. Everything can.
Yeah, I was having a row with my 17-year-old son by phone last night because he's doing his extended essay for the bac. And he promised me that he'd get it out the way by last Sunday, and he was still faffing round yesterday. So I think Rhan has got a point. He's done 4 ASs and he's got the bac. So he sees it as an additional burden. I'd say, with the benefit of hindsight, that actually there are elements of the Welsh Bac, and I agree that it's a lot better that we're looking at a graded system, which, when you look back, might make you believe that you've had a more rounded education. The problem that we've got is we've got this pressure from England, where they're going ever more sort of traditional in their educational outlook, where they're wanting sort of, to scrap modular exams. They want sort of, the type of exams that I took. And we're actually we're having that debate in Wales. We've actually had a qualifications review where we'll be changing the way that we do qualifications. In some ways, perhaps we should have been looking at the curriculum before the qualifications. We've done it a bit because we've been responding to the situation in England rather than the other way around. But I think we're actually going about it the right way, even though at times it's difficult to swim against the tide when you've got the big neighbour next door going in completely the opposite direction. Okay, well, there you go. Alan's got a 17-year-old son talking about this kind of thing, so he's related to it. Just can you let us know what course, what stage are you at, and what are you studying at the moment?
I've just finished my AS levels.
Right.
So I'm doing music, English, history, geography, plus the Welsh Bac.
Right, okay.
Have you done your extended essay?
We had a PowerPoint presentation that was quite lengthy as well.
And you're just finding it's just one step too far, is it?
Yeah.
You just... Yeah.
I don't like the whole portfolio kind of concept of it. I prefer a straight-up exam. And when you have, want to do a specific subject in uni, and there's so many other subjects that would complement it really nicely, it's quite annoying to not have that choice to do that. Okay. Go on then, Alex, quickly.
What is interesting is my son actually had this idea that perhaps the bac was a waste of space, but he's looking at doing medicine, and he's got to a situation where even in Manchester University, they will actually accept 2 A-levels in the Welsh Bac at a certain grade. So I think there's an increasing acceptance within the university sector of the Welsh Bac, although there has been difficulty in certain departments in certain universities prior to this.
Okay, final answer to the final question.
Not much to say. I mean, I would have made Alid's point that it's the rigour of the qualification that's important. Now, Cardiff presumably have to recognise it, but do Imperial, Oxford, Durham, and the great English universities. And if they do, the general concept of skills-based, wider spectrum, I think it's valuable. You're doing a very good range of A-levels, and you'll get excellent range of skills. But I still think the A-level curriculum is quite specialised. I did my postgraduate degree in the United States, and even undergraduates there wouldn't specialise as much as A-level students here. And my director of studies used to use the example that one of the 3 subjects I did between the ages of 16 and 18 was British and European history. And then he would say to the students, and it was 18th century British and European history. And the Americans just thought this was absolutely crazy approach, So I have to say, I do think the A-level curriculum it's still too specialised, though clearly public policy has been trying to stretch it by having AS and
okay. Thank you very much. Look, we're on the clock. We've got to finish there. Thanks very much to everyone. And I don't know if you want to show some applause to the panel. Why not? I hope I'm on time. 12:15. Is that okay? Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
And can I just say, keep asking, your questions don't need to stop here. Contact your local AM if you've got issues, if you've got questions you want to ask David, Aled, myself, would be delighted to hear from you, seriously, keep talking.
Especially if you're in my region and will one day be part of the electorate that I'll have to answer.
Okay, diolch yn fawr galon i chi.